It was a gray Wednesday in the sleepy town of Larkspur Hollow, tucked somewhere between Oregon's evergreens and nobody's map. The streets were quiet, the sky brooding, and in the middle of Main Street stood a narrow brick shop with faded gold letters on its front window. Whitmore Books, EST 1924. Inside, Eleanor Whitmore, early 60s, sharp eyes behind dusty glasses, was rearranging a table of unsold poetry books. Her bookstore, inherited from her father, had survived Amazon, e-books, and even a small electrical fire in '98. She didn't suffer fools, bargain hunters, or people who dog-eared pages. At 11:07 a.m., the bell above the door jingled. She glanced up and frowned. A tall man in a leather jacket stepped inside, helmet under his arm, sunglasses still on. Rain dripped from his boots. He moved slowly, surveying the shelves like he knew them. "Can I help you?" Eleanor asked, not unkind, but not inviting either. The man pulled off his glasses. His eyes were gentle, but his face unmistakable. "Just browsing," Keanu Reeves said. Eleanor stiffened. "I'm sorry, are you?" she started, then stopped herself. "No. Never mind. We don't host impersonators here." Keanu blinked. "Pardon." Eleanor crossed her arms. "We had a Brad Pitt look-alike come through last month. Left with a signed Hemingway and never paid. You're very convincing, but this is private property." Keanu smiled faintly. "I assure you, I'm not impersonating anyone. And I'm Jane Austen." She walked to the phone. "If you don't leave, I'm calling Sheriff Tate." "Please don't," Keanu said calmly. "I'm just looking for a book." "Right," she said. "The Matrix, novelization?" He chuckled. "Actually, I'm looking for The Echo of Paper Wings. 1987. Self-published." That stopped her. "No one's asked for that book in 30 years, she said slowly. "I've been looking for it almost that long." Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "Why?" Keanu exhaled. "Because the man who wrote it changed my life. And I think he might have been my father." Eleanor didn't move. "You're telling me your father was Theo Whitmore," she said, voice thin with disbelief. "I don't know," Keanu replied. "That's what I'm here to find out." Eleanor stared at him, long enough to read sincerity in his eyes, or madness. Maybe both. She turned and walked to a dusty corner near the back of the store. From beneath a creaky shelf, she pulled a small, faded box marked private. Inside was a single, sun-bleached copy of The Echo of Paper Wings. Its cover showed a boy on a rooftop made of clouds. She held it out cautiously. "My father printed 50 copies, she said. Typed every page himself on a Remington. Tried to sell it out of the trunk of his car." Keanu accepted the book with reverence. "He wrote about dreams that couldn't land," he murmured, flipping pages. "That phrase, it never left me." Eleanor narrowed her gaze. "Where'd you read this?" "Toronto. 1989. In a thrift shop. It had an inscription. To the son I never met. I thought it was a metaphor, until I read more." Eleanor leaned on the counter, arms crossed. "And you think that son was you?" "I don't know. But my mother lived in L.A. in the late 60s. She knew a man who wrote poetry and smoked pipe tobacco. She never told me his name." Eleanor's voice dropped. "My father lived in L.A. briefly. Around that time." They stared at each other, the air heavy with something more than coincidence. Then Keanu pulled something from his coat. A folded letter, yellowed, crinkled, unreadable at a glance. He laid it on the counter. "I found this tucked inside the book," he said. "Signed only, T.W." Eleanor's breath caught. She opened it. The handwriting was unmistakable. "If someday you find this, know that I watched from afar. I chose distance over damage. Forgive me." She read it twice, 3 times. Then looked up. "My father never spoke of a son," she whispered. I'm not here to claim anything, Keanu said. No money, no name. I just needed to know if the voice that shaped my life came from a man I was part of. Eleanor, suddenly unsteady, sank onto a stool. After a long silence, she said, "Come with me." They climbed a narrow staircase to the store's attic. Dusty beams, faded paintings, and a single, locked trunk. Eleanor opened it. Inside were letters. Hundreds. All addressed, but never sent. One caught her eye. She pulled it out and read aloud. "To my son, wherever you are. I hope one day you'll walk into my world, not because you know who I am, but because you felt it." Her hands trembled. "I thought these were fiction," she said softly. Keanu stepped forward. "So did I." They sat on the attic floor, knees brushing dust, surrounded by decades-old letters neither of them knew existed. Eleanor's fingers shook as she opened one marked 1972. Inside was a sketch, crude but vivid, of a boy with tousled hair and sad eyes standing alone on a pier. Beneath it, scribbled in the margin, "Maybe he looks like this. Maybe not. But he's always looking back at me." Eleanor didn't speak. She simply handed it to Keanu. He stared at the drawing, then whispered, "That's me." "Are you sure?" "I have a photo. I was 6. Same year. Same sweater." Eleanor leaned back, stunned. "My father never mentioned you," she said again, more to herself than to him. "But he wrote about you. That book, it was his way of reaching out. He never tried to find me." "No," she agreed. "But I think he wanted you to find him." Downstairs, the bell jingled. Neither moved. "Let the customers wait." Keanu glanced around the attic. "This place, he built it?" "From scratch," Eleanor said. "And nearly lost it 5 times. But he said it kept him sane. Said books don't judge the way people do." Keanu smiled faintly. "Sounds like something he'd write." Eleanor exhaled. "You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were here to steal something. Maybe you were. But not what I expected." "I didn't come for answers," Keanu said. "Just truth. Same thing, sometimes." She stood and dusted off her jeans. "Come on. There's something you need to see." They walked back down to the bookstore floor. She reached behind the counter and pulled out an old ledger, the kind with handwritten receipts, yellowed tape, and initials in the margins. She flipped to the back. Inside the rear cover was a folded newspaper clipping. "Canadian teen actor makes Hollywood debut." Keanu's face, fresh and unsure, smiled from the grainy page. "Wait," he said. "Why is this here?" "I found it after he died. Stuffed into his favorite book, Leaves of Grass. No note. No explanation." Keanu's mouth opened, but no words came. Finally, he said, "He knew." Eleanor nodded. "But he still never reached out." She closed the ledger gently. "Maybe he was ashamed. Maybe he was afraid. Maybe he thought watching from afar was enough." Keanu ran a hand through his hair. "It wasn't." Eleanor looked at him, something soft breaking in her. "Maybe it wasn't," she said. "But you found him. And me. That's something." The storm outside had passed by the time they stepped onto the sidewalk. The sun broke through clouds, casting long shadows across Main Street. Keanu stood beside the bookstore, gazing up at the old, weathered sign. "He named it after himself," he said quietly. "He didn't have much else," Eleanor replied. "This place was everything to him." They watched as a young couple entered the store, laughing, unaware of the history layered in its walls. Keanu turned. "You ever think about closing it?" Eleanor sighed. "Every day. It doesn't make money. People read on screens now. But I can't let it go. It's the last piece of him." Keanu nodded. Then pulled a pen from his pocket. "May I?" She raised an eyebrow but handed him the inside cover of the Echo of Paper Wings, the very copy he had sought. Keanu inscribed. To the man who built a life in margins and metaphors. I found you. Finally. K. He handed it back and said, keep it here. Let someone else find it, the way I did. Eleanor swallowed hard. You could take it. It's yours. No, he said. It was never mine alone. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a check, not flashy, not overblown, but enough to keep Whitmore Books running for another year. I want to invest, he said. In memory. In story. In people like him. Eleanor didn't argue. Instead, she embraced him, quick, awkward, but real. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing him. And for letting me see you. Keanu smiled. Maybe I'll come back. Help reshelve the philosophy section. Only if you alphabetize correctly, she teased. He walked back to his bike. Helmet on, keys ready. Just before he rode off, Eleanor called out, you know, he used to say bookstores weren't just buildings. They're chapters waiting to be read. Keanu looked back. Then maybe this was one of mine, he said. And with that, he rode away, the engine low and steady, the wind carrying him forward, not toward fame or escape, but toward a quieter truth he'd waited a lifetime to hear. Inside the store, the echo of Paper Wings sat on a display near the register. A handwritten note beneath it read, this book found its way home. Let it find you, too. And in Larkspur Hollow, where stories were sacred and time moved slower, no one ever looked at that little bookstore the same way again.